What it do, Bolt fam? It's your boy J Walk coming at you with another episode of Charger Couch Scout. And man, do we have some scouting to do because we have 2 weeks left until the 2022 NFL draft, and we got a lot of ground to cover. We got a lot of players to talk about. We got a lot of positions that are in need of additions. And today we're going to start off with wide receiver. We're going to talk about some of my favorite wide receivers in this draft. Not the best wide receivers in the draft, but my favorite wide receivers, guys that I think can bring some things that are missing from this wide receiver room. And, we all know speed is one and yards after catch is the other. So I think I've done a pretty good job of assembling guys that are, one of the two, if not a combination of them. And also, first and foremost, reliable hand catchers. Because if you don't catch the ball, then you can't get yards after the catch. So, first I want to have some honorable mentions. Bayless Jones Jr., Danny Gray. Jones Jr. is from University of Tennessee. Danny Gray is from SMU. And those guys I was really high on, especially if the Chargers didn't go receiver in the first round, possibly pick one of them up in the third, to do double duty, not just as a receiver, to be able to do screens and also as potential downfield threats, but to also perhaps contribute on special teams. Danny Gray did punt and kick return in 2020, but not in 2021. Bayless Jones Jr., however, is a career special teams player. I don't think either one of them are on the board for the Chargers now because they recently picked up DeAndre Carter, who is used in much of the same ways that these guys are used, both on offense and special teams. So I don't see the Chargers going or looking at either one of them at this point. But I just wanted to mention them because I like their game, and they've been doing well throughout the process, particularly Bayless Jones Jr., who is almost typecast as by some people as more of just a special teams player. But I think he does bring some ability to the offense because we've seen the Chargers kind of struggle with the short passing game, trying to throw screens to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I have no idea why they were throwing screens to Keenan Allen. But now that they have DeAndre Carter, hopefully he'll pick up some of that, some of those duties, and can make some things happen in the shorter passing game. But beyond that, we're going to start with number 5. And this guy has some speed. You don't really see it conveyed in his game. What he is he's just a zone eater. He makes things, a solid route runner. He gets open. He catches the ball. He secures the ball. And it's really nothing flashy about it. I mean, I don't have any measurements for his arm length because for some reason, he wasn't invited to the combine. But he did have 1,000 yards receiving this past season on 71 catches. And he's one of those wide receivers, like I said. He's only 6 foot. Oh, Jakoy Roberson from Wake Forest. I don't know if I even said his name. I'm sorry if I didn't. But I didn't get his arm length, but they look long on tape. And I've seen him use that arm length to hold the ball away from defenders and also make catches away from his body. Again, not very flashy. He can beat you downfield. He has done it, but he's not a super just constant threat to attack deep and hold that over a defense's head, keeping them on their toes. I don't think that's his game. He's more of a short to intermediate receiver, and then every now and then he'll go a little deep. I saw that the Chargers actually met with him, and I tweeted that, I wasn't surprised, but I thought it was interesting that they were looking at a guy that was, used very much the same way that they used Joshua Palmer and Keenan Allen. I think having those guys be interchangeable is beneficial to the offense, just in case, God forbid, knock on wood, if one of those guys ever went down, you still have two other guys that can play multiple positions and multiple roles on the offense. So that's Jakoy Roberson, solid receiver, solid hands catcher. And that's always something I'm a fan of seeing instead of a guy letting the ball get into his body. Number 4 is my man White Chocolate. You guys heard me talk about him before. Very aggressive route runner. Man, I hate to say it. But he's one of those white guys that get typecast as a Patriot type receiver. But he is a really good route runner. He is really good with his short area quickness. He's not going to blow you away with speed. He ran a 4.5 at the combine. What does concern me about him is he only has 29-inch arms, but man, he knows how to make defenders miss. And again, another short to intermediate receiver. Just the ability to use his quickness as a weapon. You always hear some people say, quicker than fast. That's Kyle Phillips. And I think about Cooper Kupp when I'm talking about receivers these days, because a lot of Charger fans, they're fixated on 40 times and just flat out speed. And that's not the end all be all when it comes to yards after catch. I mean, Kyle Phillips, Cooper Kupp is the perfect example, because he said, quickness is a necessity. Speed is a luxury. And I think about that with Kyle Phillips because, again, he's not that fast, but he can make a guy miss. He's slippery. He's slippery. And he can just kind of shift around and gain some yards after his catches. Doesn't have an incredibly high yards per catch number. I think it was like 12 yards per catch, if I'm not mistaken. But just a really solid receiver that can get you those gotta have it catches and keep the chains moving. I think that's going to be his thing on a 3rd and short or a 3rd and 4 or something like that. You can just kind of look his way and know that you have a dependable, reliable receiver that's going to bring it in and keep it going. Didn't have a very heavy workload at UCLA. The most catches he's ever had in a single season was only like 60. And, UCLA doesn't have one of the best quarterback situations. So you just kind of have to overlook the raw numbers and really just look at what he was able to do when he was given opportunities with the ball. So he was also used as a punt returner, running with a 4.5. I wouldn't expect the Chargers to use him as a punt returner, but it's nice to know that he had. But that again plays into his escapability, his ability to make guys miss, regardless of his actual speed. Number 3. Now we're getting into the fast guys. Now we're hitting some speed here because now we're going to talk about somebody that I just feel like has been very overlooked throughout this entire draft process outside of his real one moment of glory at the combine when he ran a 4.28. And that's Taekwon Thornton. And I wasn't blown away by the idea or super impressed because he ran a 4.28 because I heard that he ran track. And so I figured that Thornton would be just one of those players that ran track and then was convinced to play football also. But then I looked at his tape and I saw just how good of a route runner he is. and how, dare I say, great of a hands catcher this guy is. And that's when I realized, no, 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 no. He is not simply a track star that just happens to play football. He is a football player that also just happens to run track. And I think it's a difference. You can see, when you have a track star playing football, he has a lot of raw qualities, when it comes to those things that I mentioned, whether it's route running or just the ease of catching with their hands. Sometimes they can look like they're fighting the ball. But Taekwon Thornton, he just looks like such a natural receiver. He can, again, beat you at all three levels. He can do a little bit on the yak side of things. I've seen him be used just as much as a possession receiver in Baylor's offense as he has a downfield threat. And I think, again, when you start talking about unpredictability and having a receiver that can attack on all three levels, Taekwon Thornton fits the build because he can, like pretty much everybody else on this list besides Kyle Phillips, he can just kind of rock you to sleep. And then when you start to nod off, boom, he's gone down the field for 65 yards. Some of his plays could have been better than they were because he didn't have much like Kyle Phillips, he wasn't given the best quarterback that could take advantage of his abilities. And a lot of deep passes to him were underthrown where he had the defender beat by 2 or 3 steps, but then had to slow down to catch the ball, and then the defender was up on him, and then he'd get tackled. Where, some of those plays would go for 35, 40 yards when they could have been a 55 or 60-yard touchdown instead. And I think Taekwon Thornton, when I watch him play, when I look at how he's built, when I look at his speed, I can't help but wonder that if he had been at Alabama and somebody like Jameson Williams had been at Baylor, how different would the perception of them be? Because I think Taekwon Thornton could have produced very similar numbers to what Jameson Williams put up at Alabama, outside of the fact that he wasn't a special teams guy. So Thornton, very underrated route runner, very underrated receiver when it comes to using his hands, and just very underrated player in this draft at all. And so if the Chargers go in another direction in the first round and he's still there in the third, I don't even know what his projection is, but with his ability and also the fact on top of that, it's not like you're asking him to be a number 1 or number 2 receiver. He's going to be your third receiver at best. Having the ability to add that level of speed in a later round on a day 2 pick or a day 3 pick, you can't go wrong with that. So Taekwon Thornton, number 3. Favorite fit for the Chargers in this draft. Number 2, my man, Chris Sweet Feet Olave. The smoothest of the smooth. And this guy, I've been going on about it for several episodes now. The smoothest route runner in the draft. This guy is too cool for school. He can, again, versatility. He's played X. He's played Z. He's played the slot. Can attack at all 3 levels of the defense. Probably not even probably, he's the most refined route runner in this draft class. His ability to make every route look exactly the same is very rare, because it's not often that you see that much attention to detail from somebody in college. And it's not like, he developed this after entering the NFL or something. Like, he's coming into the NFL with this level of route running that is rarely seen by college players, where they typically, rely on their raw abilities. It would have been very easy to see a receiver like Chris Olave, who runs a 4.3, to, just rely on that, his speed. Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and, just kind of have, suspect or mediocre route running ability. But you can tell he practices this. He's a technician. And he understands angles. He understands how to manipulate a defender's body. He understands blind spots. He understands how to manipulate zone defenders, because that's his thing. Very similar to Roberson, but to a much further degree, where he would just carve you up if you are playing zone on him. And that is his biggest strength. Is when he's at his best, is when he's going up against zone defenses. But then he also brings you the short area quickness, like a Cal Phillips, where when it comes to those slants and those speed outs and your shorter routes like that, he's just gonna be able to use that suddenness to get that separation. Even if it's a step and a half or two, he's gonna get it, and he's gonna keep those chains moving. Now, the one curious thing that I have about Chris Olave is that he ran a 4.3 at the combine, and he ran faster than I expected him to run. And for as smooth as he looks, and how easy he makes things look, when he is attacking downfield, that speed does not show up with separation. And that is just the one curious thing about him. He's played with quarterbacks with strong arms, so I just don't get it. Now, I know in 2021, he wasn't used as much as a downfield threat as he was the previous year. But even in 2020, when he, like, the defenders would still be right up on him. And his ability to separate shows up more in the short passes, where he can use his route running ability to create that separation, as opposed to down the field, where he's using his speed to try to create separation. He's much better at one than the other. So that's probably the only drawback that I have with Olave. But one of my favorite receivers. Now, the question with Olave is, okay, he's a really good receiver. He can attack at all three levels, yada, yada. But when you look at how he would be used, does that warrant a first-round pick? Or is the potential value of taking somebody else at an important position, and the prospect of taking a Taekwon Thornton or a Kyle Phillips, who is a slower version of Chris Olave, and how I could see them being used on the Chargers? Is that more tempting than taking Olave himself? Because if he can't get that downfield separation in college, it's possible that he may not be able to get it in the NFL. And would you even entertain using him that way because of how contested the passes would be? I don't know. I don't know. But if he's used as a more short to intermediate receiver than down the field, I could see them potentially looking somewhere else at a better value and addressing a different position at 17. All right. We went through all those people just to get to number one. And I think it's pretty easy to see where this is going. Because I've looked far and wide, and there is not one offensive player in this draft that is capable of being as explosive of a threat as this guy here. And that's Jameson Williams, wide receiver from Alabama. And what is there to really say about him? He does it all. He returns kicks. He's a gunner on punts. He can take a slant to the house. He can take a hitch to the house. He can do it all. And this guy could be the missing link. When you start talking about what could put this offense over the top, we are potentially talking about Jamar Chase level of impact if you were somehow to match this guy up with Justin Herbert. And I'm not saying he's the same kind of player as Jamar Chase. We all know that. Very different styles. But his speed, his ability to turn the tide, no pun intended, because he went to Alabama, but his ability to just change the game and turn it on its head with a big play should not go overlooked. And something that some Charger fans felt was very underutilized with Justin Herbert in 2021 was his downfield passing, his big play passing. And adding Jameson Williams to this offense would fix all of that in a hurry. And I think about what Bucky Brooks tweeted one time, where he was talking about if you're going to be a great team, first you got to be able to dominate on one side of the ball. And I feel like Jameson Williams could take the Chargers offense to that level where they would be dominant. Because there would be no more double teaming Mike Williams. There would be no more double teaming Keenan Allen and shutting them out, for a whole half of a game because they can't get open, causing Herbert to have to dump the ball short to Austin Eckler or whoever coming out of the backfield. It would be no more of that because you would not be able to double team anybody with Jameson Williams on the field. And one of the coolest things about Jameson Williams, well, before I get to the coolest thing, I'm just going to say this. He's not the prettiest route runner. He's no Chris Olave or Kyle Phillips. I don't even think he's a Taekwon Thornton when it comes to route running. But his nuance as a wide receiver does not come from his route running or his catching with his hands, because he is a bit of a body catcher. What it comes from is his ability to manipulate defenders with his speed, because he can throttle up and he can throttle down and use that to affect whoever's covering him. And I think that that's just, I don't want to say unusual, but it's unique. It's unique because it's a very deceptive way of playing. You don't see it a whole lot, and he's not all the time pedal to the floor, 100 miles an hour runner. What he'll do is he'll run the route at one speed, and once he catches it, hit the next gear, hauls ass down the field before you can even realize. You're like, oh, I did not realize he was that fast. And by the time the defender realizes how fast he's gone. He's gone. And I think this dude is just a lethal weapon. I don't care. I'll say it now. I don't care what the cost is. If the Chargers have to line up with Trey Pipkins at right tackle week 1 because they took Jameson Williams in the first round, then damn it, we got to do it. Because, we are talking about a game changer. And there are very few of those in this draft that could be as lethal of a combination when combined with Justin Herbert. That's just the way I see it. You want to talk about, I know they need a right tackle. I know they need a right guard. But it's not often where you can get a guy that can do what he does and you already have a quarterback that is itching for that kind of weapon. And that would put this offense would be over the top. It would be the most explosive offense that we've seen in some time, probably since the Chiefs when they won their Super Bowl. Like, that's the level that we're talking here. So that's it. That's my top 5 wide receivers for the draft. Oh, my favorite wide receivers for the draft, I should say. You got to be careful because I don't think these guys are like, some of them, I don't think they're like top 10 or maybe even top 20 talents like Kyle Phillips. But the way you were used makes all the difference. And these guys, some of them can be used very much so the same way. And some of them are more explosive than others. But it's just a matter of how they're going to be used, what the vision is for them as a player, by whoever the coordinator is, where they go. But I would not be upset if the Chargers went with any one of these 5 guys here. So that about does it for this episode of Charger Couch Scout. This your boy J Walt signing off. Until next time when we do some more chit-chatting and some more evaluations, because like I said, we do have a lot to talk about before the draft in a couple of weeks. So until next time, y'all, peace.